He stared at the glass case. The mummy inside, it had his twin's face. Every line, every scar, it was him. Isaiah's heart pounded. His twin brother had vanished 8 years ago, and now the unthinkable was real. His twin was behind the museum glass, preserved like some ancient relic. When he called his mother, her hand shook. "Isaiah, how is this possible?" she whispered. The disappearance wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was a living nightmare, and it had just begun. The morning felt ordinary enough to trust. Isaiah woke before his alarm, because he always did, because routine was the only thing that kept the noise outside his head quiet. Coffee, window open, sirens far away, close enough to remind him where he lived. A narrow apartment in a city that never apologized for how hard it could be on people who looked like him. He checked his phone, nothing urgent. Therefore, he let himself breathe. But that was when the television flickered on as he tapped the remote. Not loud, just enough volume to slip into the room like a thought he didn't invite. A CNN advertisement rolled up through the screen. Polished graphics, calm narration, a traveling museum exhibition, ancient artifacts, preserved bodies. History brought face to face with the present. The exhibit was moving state to state, coming to Los Angeles next. He almost ignored it, almost reached for the remote. But then the image appeared. Not an anchor, not a curator, a single still slipped into the montage, framed with museum lighting and dramatic shadows. A mummy, desiccated skin stretched tight over bone, jaw slightly parted, head tilted, as if frozen mid-thought, and his chest tightened before his mind could explain why. Because it wasn't the decay that felt familiar. It wasn't the angle of the face. It was the left eye, darkened, sunken, a deep black mark circling it, like an old bruise or a birthmark that time had preserved instead of erased. A tiny asymmetry most people would dismiss as damage from centuries ago. But he didn't dismiss it. He stepped closer to the screen without realizing he'd moved. The narrator continued smoothly. A rare and haunting collection, unseen by the public until now. Therefore, the image vanished into the next artifact. But the face didn't leave him. He tried to shake it off, told himself it was impossible. Mummies were ancient, features repeat. History plays tricks on the living. Therefore, he went back to his coffee, took a sip, burned his tongue, didn't notice, because his mind had already slipped backward. Decades earlier, before the city hardened him, before his voice learned when to soften and when to disappear, there was a boy who laughed too loud at the wrong times. A boy who hated photographs but showed up anyway because his mother liked proof that they existed together. He always turned his face slightly away, never straight at the camera. That eye again, darkened, marked, unavoidable. But this wasn't supposed to matter anymore. He had buried that chapter beneath work schedules and rent notices and the daily work of staying upright. Therefore, he told himself the past stayed buried unless someone disturbed it. But someone had disturbed it. Back then, the missing man wasn't an exhibit. He wasn't a curiosity. He was a person who forgot his keys twice a week. A person who hated the cold, but walked home anyway to save bus money. A person who carried the same worn cassette player long after the world moved on, because one tape inside meant more than progress ever could. And that tape would matter later. But right now, all that mattered was the feeling crawling up his spine. The sense that this advertisement wasn't promoting history. It was summoning him. Therefore, he checked the date. The exhibit opened in Los Angeles in 3 days. But the real fracture came when the advertisement looped. This time, the mummy's face stayed on screen a fraction longer. Long enough for him to notice the tension in the jaw, the angle of the head, the way the darkened eye didn't look dead at all. It looked aware. And it wasn't facing the camera. It was facing something just beyond it. And that meant the story hadn't ended centuries ago. It had been waiting. And whatever had been preserved wasn't meant to stay silent any longer. The disappearance is simple. There is no chase, no scream, no moment that gets replayed later in slow motion. In Los Angeles, on an ordinary evening that didn't feel dangerous, Elijah Carter tells his family he's stepping out for a bit. He says he needs air. He says he'll be back before midnight. He never comes home. Elijah is still there when Isaiah grabs his keys. Still sitting on the edge of the couch. still scrolling on his phone like he's got nowhere important to be, even though Isaiah knows better. Elijah always pretends his plans are smaller than they are. "You coming or not?" Isaiah asks. Elijah looks up, smiles the way he always does when he's already decided something, but doesn't want the argument yet. "I'll catch up." "That's what you said last time." "And I did," Elijah says. "Eventually." Isaiah snorts. "Eventually is not a time." "But it's close enough," Elijah says, standing now stretching like he owns the night. "I just need to step out first." Their mom, Valerie Carter, calls from the kitchen without looking up. "Where are you going?" Elijah grabs his jacket. "Just down the block. Clear my head." Isaiah watches him longer than necessary. Twins do that. They notice pauses other people miss. "You want company?" Elijah shakes his head. "Nah, I'll be back before midnight." There it is, the line he always uses when he wants Isaiah not to follow. But Isaiah lets it go. Therefore, he opens the door instead and steps into the hallway first, giving Elijah space, giving him trust, giving him the kind of freedom that only exists when you think there will be another chance later. Elijah claps him on the shoulder as he passes. "Don't wait up." Isaiah turns. "You say that like I ever listen." Elijah grins. "That's why it works." Then he's gone. No slam, no rush, just footsteps fading down the stairs. Isaiah doesn't know that's the last sound of his brother he'll ever hear. They were 23, identical in face, different in posture. Isaiah stood straighter, shoulders back, like he was always bracing for something. Elijah leaned forward when he walked, like he was chasing the next thought before it escaped. Both were black. Both raised to believe discipline was love because that was the only way their mother knew how to keep them alive. Their father, Staff Sergeant Daniel Carter, had died overseas years earlier. A war their mother never named out loud, a folded flag handed to her by a stranger in uniform. Therefore, Evelyn Carter trained her sons the way grief demanded. Early mornings, physical conditioning, mental focus, situational awareness drilled into them like prayer. But she also let them dream. Isaiah wanted to leave California, not because he hated it, but because he needed to know he could. He talked about Washington State, then New York, then anywhere with seasons that changed honestly. He saved money in an envelope under his mattress, labeled it exit. He believed planning was protection. Elijah dreamed differently. He wanted to stay close to home, close to his mother, but still build something that felt his. Music, production, late nights in borrowed studios. He believed sound could say what people were too afraid to admit. He kept notebooks full of unfinished ideas, always promising he'd clean them up later. But later never arrived. My awesome viewers, where are you watching from in the time where you are? Kindly comment and please subscribe too. Let's continue. The disappearance is simple. There is no chase, no scream, no moment that gets replayed later in slow motion. In Los Angeles, on an ordinary evening that didn't feel dangerous, Elijah Carter tells his family he's stepping out for a bit. He says he needs air. He says he'll be back before midnight. He never comes home. His twin brother, Isaiah Carter, waits at first. That's what twins do. They trust the rhythm between them. They believe silence has meaning. Therefore, Isaiah doesn't panic when midnight passes. He assumes Elijah got caught up somewhere. A late conversation, a long walk, a missed bus. But by morning, the silence has weight. Elijah's phone goes straight to voicemail. His shoes are still by the door. His jacket hangs where he left it. His wallet sits on the dresser, cash untouched. Everything there except him. The apartment looks paused, like someone stepped out of the frame and forgot to come back in. Isaiah checks the neighborhood himself. The liquor store on the corner, the bus stop 2 blocks down, the alley Elijah always avoided because their mother drilled caution into them after their father died overseas. Staff Sergeant Malcolm Carter, killed in a war Isaiah never learned to picture properly. A folded flag, a quiet house, a mother who turned grief into training. Valerie Carter raised her sons with intention. Early mornings, discipline, awareness. She believed preparation could keep fate from circling too close. But even she has no explanation for how one son can vanish without friction. Police take the report. Adult male, no sign of struggle, no immediate danger. Therefore, the case cools before it ever heats up. Weeks turn into months. Isaiah keeps living because stopping would mean accepting something he refuses to name. He works days, helps his mother at night, keeps Elijah's room exactly the same half-finished sketches taped to the wall, the same notebook filled with architectural drawings Elijah used to obsess over. Buildings that stretched upwards, clean and precise, like he was designing his way out of something. Elijah had dreams. He wanted to leave California one day, not in a dramatic way, just enough distance to feel like the world was larger than survival. He talked about Chicago, about Boston, about places with old buildings and long histories. Isaiah used to tease him for it, said Los Angeles already had everything. But Elijah used to smile and say, not everything is meant to stay. Isaiah's dream was simpler. Stability, staying close to their mother, making sure the family didn't fracture again. Twins don't always share ambition, but they share gravity. When Elijah disappeared, Isaiah felt the pull rip loose. Years pass with no leads, no body, no sightings, no answers. Therefore, Elijah becomes a question instead of a person. Until the museum, it's not supposed to matter. Isaiah is traveling for work, passing through Arizona on a tight schedule. He stops because the building is already there, because the banner is loud, because curiosity fills the gaps grief leaves behind. Traveling antiquities mummian, ancient remains, preserved history, cultures long gone. Inside, the air is cold, controlled, the lighting is deliberate. Each display sits behind glass, sealed off from touch, from time, from responsibility. Isaiah walks without expectation. Then he stops. The figure is upright, wrapped, preserved. The placard uses careful language. Estimated age, unknown origin, acquired through private collection. No date listed, no story attached. But the face is wrong. Not damaged, not decayed. Just familiar in a way that punches the breath out of his chest. The left eye sits lower than the right. A tiny detail. A flaw. Something only family ever notices. Isaiah doesn't move closer at first. His body locks before his mind catches up. Because recognition arrives before logic can intervene. Because memory doesn't ask permission. Elijah used to complain about that eye. Used to joke that cameras hated him for it. Isaiah remembers teasing him, telling him it made him real. The museum doesn't acknowledge any of this. The label stays silent. No name, no disappearance. No explanation for why a young black man from Los Angeles is displayed as something ancient, something finished, something that should belong to centuries ago. This display should not exist in this time. Isaiah leaves without finishing the mummy. He sits in his car afterward, hands on the wheel, shaking without knowing when it started. He calls his mother but doesn't say what he saw. He can't. Saying it would make it solid. Therefore, he drives away with a promise instead. He will come back. He will find out how his brother went from missing person to preserved artifact. And he will learn who decided Elijah Carter's life belonged behind glass. Because Elijah never comes home. And someone turned that absence into a mummy. And that decision is going to break open whether they're ready or not. Isaiah Carter is not the kind of man who jumps to conclusions. He works a steady job, pays his bills on time, keeps his thoughts organized because letting them wander feels dangerous. He believes most things have explanations, even painful ones, especially painful ones. That belief is how he survived the last 8 years without Elijah. Elijah Carter was his twin, older by 3 minutes. He liked to remind Isaiah of that whenever it mattered and even when it didn't. Elijah talked more, dreamed louder, left sketches on every surface like proof he was planning a future instead of running from one. When he disappeared, Isaiah didn't dramatize it. He filed reports, made calls, followed procedure. Then he accepted the silence. Not because it made sense, but because rational people eventually learn which questions never answer back. Isaiah still lives in California, still close to their mother, Valerie, still carries himself like someone who understands risk. He avoids unnecessary conflict, avoids places that feel off, avoids stories that rely on coincidence. Therefore, when he walked into the traveling antiquities mummy after the advertisement he saw on the local news, he didn't go looking for ghosts. and he didn't believe in signs. That's why the face matters. Not the idea of it, not the shock, the detail, the left eye, the way the lower lid dips just enough to pull the expression sideways. A flaw so small no stranger would clock it. A flaw Isaiah grew up seeing every morning in the bathroom mirror, reflected back from the sink beside his own face. That recognition doesn't come with panic. It comes with stillness. Isaiah doesn't tell anyone at first. Not his co-workers, not his friends, not even Valerie. He tells himself memory can misfire, grief can project, museums curate illusions all the time, but the face follows him. In reflections, in crowds, in pauses between thoughts. Because rational men can explain almost anything, except recognition. And once you recognize something that isn't supposed to exist, the rules you live by quietly stop working. The mummy is colder than it needs to be. Not uncomfortable, intentional. Isaiah feels it the moment he steps inside, the way temperature changes when something is meant to last longer than people do. The lighting is low, soft, respectful in the way institutions pretend respect can replace truth. Glass cases line the room, bodies arranged carefully, preserved, labeled with words that feel safe, estimated, believed, possibly. Isaiah moves slowly, not because he's afraid, but because rushing would mean he already knows where this is going. Then he sees it. The figure stands upright behind the glass, wrapped in linen that looks too clean to be honest. The posture is wrong for something ancient, shoulders squared, spine straight, like someone posed it instead of discovering it. Isaiah stops a few feet away. The face is exposed. Same bone structure, same cheek width, same jawline that always made people confuse them growing up. He used to hate that, used to joke that Elijah stole his face. Now the humor doesn't survive the distance between him and the glass. But faces can lie. Isaiah leans closer. The nose tilts slightly left, just like Elijah's did after that childhood fall they never talked about. The mouth rests half open, frozen in something that isn't peace and isn't pain either. But it's the birthmark that collapses him. Low on the right side of the neck, small, crescent-shaped, barely darker than the surrounding skin. The mark Isaiah used to tap with his finger just to annoy his brother. The one Elijah threatened to tattoo around someday, just to make it intentional. Isaiah's breath stutters. No! He steps back. This is coincidence. This is projection. This is what grief does when it gets bored of silence. Therefore, he looks for the placard. He reads it twice. Then a third time. Unknown origin. Estimated age, mid-20s. Acquired through private collection. Private. Collection. His hands start to shake. Because the math stops working. Because museums don't preserve people like this anymore. Because there is no version of the world where Elijah Carter leaves Los Angeles alive and ends up here without someone making a decision for him. Isaiah presses his palm against the glass before he can stop himself. The surface is solid, real. The figure doesn't move, but fear does. It crawls up his spine, slow and deliberate, replacing denial piece by piece. Because if this is Elijah, then his brother didn't just disappear. He was taken. And someone decided he belonged behind glass. One moment he's staring at the glass. The next, he's 8 years old again, sitting on the couch beside Elijah, flipping through an old photo album. Their mother Valerie leans over them, smoothing Elijah's hair and scolding Isaiah for dog-earing the pictures. Laughter fills the room. Elijah giggles at a ridiculous hat he wore on Halloween. Isaiah remembers the sound, light, contagious, unguarded. Then the mummy pulls him back. Close-up of the preserved body. Linen wraps, skin bleached, brittle. The left eye slightly lower. The jawline familiar. The crescent-shaped birthmark resting in the wrong kind of light. The same face that once laughed in their living room, now frozen behind glass, silent. Memory and present fracture against each other. Another flash. Childhood kitchen. The twins arguing over breakfast cereal. Elijah teasing Isaiah for pouring the milk before the cereal. Valerie shakes her head at them, half amused, half exasperated. She never let grief touch the boys, even after their father's funeral. Discipline was love and routine was armor. But now all of it feels brittle, impossible to hold. Back to the mummy. Isaiah crouches, tracing a finger along the glass. Not touching, but desperate to measure the distance between him and the figure that wears his brother's face. Lining up childhood laughter with the stiff posture, matching the crescent birthmark with a memory of poking it playfully years ago. Silence swallows the room. No sounds of life, no echo of the past. Just the rigid, preserved shape of the person he once knew. He exhales slowly. The thought hits him like a weight he can't set down. DNA testing. It's the only way to know, to prove or disprove that this is Elijah. Proof that won't lie. Proof that might bring answers. Proof that could destroy everything he's carried quietly for years. Valerie's voice creeps in, memory and present colliding. Always check, Isaiah. Always make sure before you believe. She had drilled that into them after their father died. Facts over feeling, procedure over panic. Her words feel urgent now, a loop circling in his mind. DNA, DNA. He straightens. His rational mind kicks in, but the weight in his chest doesn't ease. The past, the present, the mummy, they mesh into one unbearable line. He has to act. He has to confirm. Because the face, the mark, the posture, they refuse to lie. A mother's voice echoes across time, a tether, a warning. Verify before you grieve. DNA. It is the only loop left that might explain everything. The report of his missing twin sits in the cold storage room of the Los Angeles Police Department, yellowing at the edges. Isaiah remembers the day clearly. June 14, 2016. Elijah was 23. Detective Ramirez had shrugged when Isaiah walked in again, 3 weeks after the disappearance. Look, adult male, no signs of foul play, probably ran away. Happens all the time, he said, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled. But he wouldn't just leave, Isaiah said. Not Elijah. Sure, Ramirez said, tapping the folder. We check around, talk to friends, see what turns up. If nothing, case goes cold. Happens every day. Isaiah left without argument, because arguing wouldn't open a case that had been quietly shelved before it even began. Bureaucracy had its rhythms. Paperwork first, follow-ups optional. Humans expend energy only where the system requires it. Weeks bled into months. Isaiah called, emailed, dropped by. Each time the same polite shrug, the same assurances that Elijah probably ran away. A mother knows when her child hasn't run anywhere. Valerie Carter's voice had been quiet but steady. Something's wrong. You feel it because it's true. She had lived through loss before, survived discipline and grief. She had eyes for details the system refused to see. There were theories, friends who had drifted away, a long-lost girlfriend, someone spotted across town at a gas station. None fit. The dates, the details, the subtle hesitations in eyewitness accounts. They never lined up with the boy Isaiah knew. One officer even suggested, maybe he's in another state, start there. But no one marked the files, no one made calls, notes accumulated dust, a photo copied and filed, a birthday typed into the database and forgotten. The case went cold, as the phrase goes, cleanly, neatly, officially. No loud protest, no closing argument, no declaration of failure, just absence in the system. Isaiah knew better. He remembers June 14th, the day the phone call stopped, the day the streets swallowed his brother's steps, the day everything normal cracked. And he remembers the feeling that settled over the LAPD offices. Quiet relief that the problem had been deferred, managed, and ultimately buried. A mother knows. Valerie had known then what Isaiah would only realize years later. Some cases aren't just unresolved. They are quietly filed away, left to rot, left to be remembered only by those who love the missing. And Elijah's absence became one of those cases. Cold, cataloged, ignored, waiting. Every year Isaiah walks past Elijah's bedroom. Every year the door swings open the same way, hinges soft with age but obedient. Posters still cling to the walls. Bands they loved in high school, a city skyline Elijah always wanted to see in person. The same sketches taped above the desk, exactly as he left it. Nothing moved, nothing added, nothing erased. Every year the birthday cake sits uneaten on the counter, candles unlit, photo candles from years past stacked carefully in a box labeled with Elijah's name. Isaiah lights one anyway. He makes the same wish, even though he knows better. The room absorbs the smoke, the walls remember, the silence answers. Every year the church bell tolls on Sunday. Isaiah sits in the pew, head bowed. Valerie sits beside him, hands folded, whispering prayers. She never stops hoping. He never stops watching her, learning patience in the spaces grief has carved into her face. The choir sings hymns that echo through empty halls, filling the gaps left behind by a twin who never came home. Every year the apartment hums with the sound of life going forward while waiting remains. The kitchen table is cleared and reset. Meals are eaten in patterns learned by habit, not necessity. The world outside moves, but inside, the twin who vanished marks time more rigidly than any clock could. Every year Isaiah checks the little details. Shoes by the door, keys in the bowl, sketchbooks on the desk, birthmarks and memories. Everything exactly as he left it. Decades compress into these rituals. Days and months fold into each other. The absence grows heavier, more defined, a presence shaped by what is missing. Every year he remembers. Every year he waits. Every year nothing changes, and the wait never stops. But Bo, he's facing the unimaginable. Isaiah steps closer to the glass, frozen in place before the figure wrapped in linen. The air smells faintly of antiseptic and polished wood. His chest tightens. He glances around, trying to steady his voice. Where did this come from? He asked, nodding toward the display. A young staff member, name tag reading Mara, turns to him, startled by the intensity in his tone. All of our specimens are ethically sourced donors, Mara says carefully, choosing her words. Private collections, university donations, everything documented, everything above board. Isaiah's eyes flick to the placard, then back at her. Do you know the donor's name? Mara hesitates, glancing at a taller woman approaching. Dr. Lillian Grant, the curator and owner of the Pacific Antiquities Mummy, steps forward with calm authority. Sir, Dr. Grant says evenly, donor identities are confidential. It's our policy. We cannot disclose them under any circumstances. Isaiah swallows hard. His hands curl at his sides. You don't understand, he says, voice shaking. That's my twin. The words hang heavy in the air. Nearby visitors turn. Phones lift. A child tugs at a parent's sleeve. Whispers ripple through the room. The mummy, meant to feel serene, now pulses with tension. Dr. Grant steps closer. Sir, please calm down. Step back. No, Isaiah says, voice breaking. I know him. That's Elijah, my brother. I've waited years. He shouldn't. This isn't. He's alive in my memory, and you. A security guard appears, radio crackling, signaling backup. Mara gestures toward the exit. Sir, please come with us. Isaiah's knees feel weak, but he doesn't resist. The left eye, the crescent-shaped birthmark. Every rational thought collides with grief, disbelief, and fear. The guard gently steers him toward the mummy office. Inside, the room is quieter, the chaos muted. Isaiah sinks into a chair, still trembling. He fishes his phone from his pocket. Mom, he says when she answers, voice low. I'm at the Pacific Antiquities Mummy. There's a pause on the line. What are you doing there? Valerie Carter asks. Her tone is sharp, protective. There's something. I need to check it. I'll handle it. Isaiah, I'm coming, she insists. No, he says firmly, even as his voice cracks. I will handle this. I need to see it first. I need to know before anyone else gets involved. She sighs, long and weary, but he can hear the worry threaded through it. All right, she says softly, but be careful. He hangs up. For a moment, the world outside the office is still, like the mummy itself. He rises, shakes off the last of the adrenaline, and turns back toward the glass. His heart hammers, but he walks with purpose. The visitors in the hall glance over, some curious, some uncertain, as he steps past security with an explanation that satisfies no one but himself. He doesn't look back at Dr. Grant or Mara. He doesn't need permission. The figure stands as it did before, rigid, silent, wrapped in linen. The face is the same, the birthmark is the same. Recognition strikes him anew. Isaiah breathes slowly, letting the weight of years, the absence, the waiting, the unresolved grief settle around him. He doesn't panic anymore. Not yet. Rationality, love, and the need for answers pull him forward. I'll take it up, he whispers to himself. A promise more than a threat. I'll find out everything. And for the first time in years, Isaiah feels the clarity of purpose slice through the fog of loss. He has seen what he needed to see. Now he will act. Isaiah sits across from Dr. Lillian Grant in the small office behind the mummy. The fluorescent light hums softly. Mara stands nearby, watching silently. Can I get you a drink? Water? Coffee? Dr. Grant asks, reaching toward a small counter. No, Isaiah snaps. His hands are clenched. You want to poison me like you poisoned my twin? Or what? Doctor. Grant raises her palms, calm. Sir, please, I understand why you're upset, but you need to breathe. This mummy is completely legal. All specimens are ethically sourced, everything above board. I don't care about legally sourced. That's my brother. Isaiah's voice shakes. I saw the birthmark, the left eye, everything. Mara shifts, speaking for the first time. The eyes. I noticed it too. The shape. I didn't want to say anything, but Dr. Grant interrupts gently. Coincidences happen. You're grieving. You've carried this absence for years. That's understandable. But this is not your twin. Isaiah leans forward, fists on the desk. You're telling me to calm down while my twin is frozen in glass? How do I believe that's not him? Dr. Grant studies him, expression steady. You want proof? I have nothing to hide. The specimen was acquired through a private collection. All documentation is available. You are welcome to take it up with the authorities if that will give you peace. Isaiah's jaw tightens. The anger lingers, but he exhales slowly. I will take it up, he says, the words deliberate. Gladly, Dr. Grant replies, a faint smile. Why not? I have nothing to hide. He stands, Mara following silently. Isaiah gives the office one last look, the fluorescent hum, the files, the calm of someone confident in their legality, but it does nothing to ease the knot in his chest. He walks out the door, the mummy behind him, but the people watches him as he leaves and he lingers. He will take it up, and what he finds next could change everything. Isaiah sits at the kitchen table, a stack of folders spread before him. Valerie leans over, brushing off decades of dust from the paper she's kept. Medical records, black eye x-rays, in-surgery documentation. The scent of old ink and coffee fills the air, heavy with memory. It doesn't make sense, Isaiah says, his voice tight. The dates, the records. The exhibit says this person is supposed to be centuries old, and yet the details, they line up perfectly with Elijah. Valerie straightens, her shoulders steady despite the weight of years. I never stopped keeping these, she says. Every appointment, every scan. I saved everything. You know I did. Isaiah flips through the x-rays, pointing to each page as if the motion could force understanding. Look here, the root structure of the teeth. And here, the shoulder implant from his accident at 12. That scar, the angle of the clavicle, it's all documented. How can someone centuries old have these same markers? Valerie exhales slowly. Everything we recorded is here. I didn't know we'd ever need it like this, but now we can't ignore it. Together they begin comparing the mummy's features to Elijah's records. Slowly, 4 unique markers emerge. The left eye slightly lower than the other. A crescent-shaped birthmark on the right side of the neck. The scar on the shoulder, and a rare black eye anomaly only Elijah has. Each detail is carefully cataloged, photographed, and cross-checked. Isaiah's hands tremble as he lays the photos side by side. These aren't coincidences. 4 separate markers all line up perfectly. That can't happen by chance. Valerie nods, her voice firm. A mother knows what's real and what's wrong. I know my son. And yet the dates refuse to make sense. The exhibit claims the specimen is centuries old, preserved in a private collection, long before Elijah was born. The science, the history of the exhibit, and the modern records all collide in ways the world cannot yet explain. Isaiah leans back, jaw tight. Then something else must be happening, something impossible. Determined, they begin contacting lawyers. 1, 2, 3. Most refuse, dismissing it as coincidence or grief-driven fixation. Each rejection presses harder against Isaiah's chest. Valerie's hand rests on his shoulder. We'll keep going, she says quietly. We have the proof. That's what matters. Isaiah nods, gathering the records into neat piles. He had already photographs of the mummy through the glass for comparison before he left the museum, capturing every angle. Charts are drawn, lists made, details carefully noted. Every match, every marker, every alignment is documented with precision. Even as frustration builds from bureaucracy and disbelief, clarity sharpens. The paradox is undeniable. A modern disappearance colliding with what appears to be ancient preservation. Every record, every observation, every detail insists on an explanation that the world isn't offering. This isn't coincidence, Isaiah murmurs. We have 4 unique markers. That's enough to prove something is wrong. Something very wrong. Valerie squeezes his hand. Then we do exactly that. Step by step, we'll make them see it. Isaiah straightens, the weight of years and absence settling into resolve. Every detail gathered, every record checked, he has what he needs. The next step will not wait. Something impossible has already happened, and now it must be confronted. Isaiah's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The number was unknown, but something in the voice that answered made him pause. Mr. Carter? This is Monique Hayes. I'm an attorney in Los Angeles. I heard about your brother's case. I've been pursuing similar civil rights matters for years, and I think I can help. Isaiah's grip tightened around his coffee mug. You want to help? Yes, she said calmly. I've dealt with exhibits and private collections before. Bodies displayed under murky provenance. I've seen the red tape. I know how to push through it. They agreed to meet the next morning in her office. Isaiah arrived, clutching the folders he'd carried for years. Medical records, black eye x-rays, surgery notes, photographs of the mummy at the Pacific Antiquities exhibit. Monique's office was lined with shelves of law books and case files. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please sit. Let me see everything you have. Isaiah lowered himself, spreading the folders across the desk. My brother vanished 8 years ago, he began. He was 23. Police closed the case after a few months, said he probably ran away. But this, he laid down the photographs. That's Elijah. That's my twin in a traveling exhibit. The features, the birthmark, the scar, the black eye anomalies, they all match. 4 distinct markers. It can't be coincidence. Monique leaned in, scanning the documents with steady, deliberate eyes. I see the statistical improbability. 4 markers aligning perfectly is extraordinary. And with a traveling exhibit, time is crucial. If it leaves California, jurisdiction gets messy. We have to act fast. Isaiah nodded. It moves from state to state. If we don't do something now, it could vanish before anyone can investigate. Monique flipped open a folder containing part of the exhibit's acquisition records. Do we have donor names? Proof of provenance? Isaiah shook his head. They insist everything is ethically sourced, confidential. Some documentation is missing, restricted, or redacted. Every time I ask, I hit a wall. She tapped her pen against the desk. That strengthens the case. Restricted access and missing paperwork can justify an emergency motion. We can request an immediate suspension of the exhibit and independent DNA testing, verification of origin, donor agreements, chain of custody, all of it. And if they attempt to move the collection, we can get a court or police injunction to prevent the owner from leaving until the investigation proceeds. Isaiah's hands shook slightly. You really think they'll listen? Monique's lips pressed together, calm but firm. Courts respond to evidence and risk. We have your brother's medical records, photographs, and 4 matching markers. We can frame this as potential wrongful appropriation and civil rights violations. The court will take it seriously. Isaiah exhaled slowly. For years, no one had taken him seriously. For the first time, someone did. Monique flipped through more pages, frowning at the redacted lines in the acquisition log. See this? Names, dates, institutions, blacked out. We don't know who authorized its transport or where it came from. That's enough to raise serious questions. And the court can demand the missing details once we subpoena the records. He leaned back, absorbing the enormity of what she was saying. So we do it. We stop the exhibit. We verify everything. Exactly, she said. She closed the folder gently. We move carefully but decisively. The emergency motion, DNA testing, subpoenas. Everything must be documented, no shortcuts. The truth is in these records, even if they've tried to hide it. Isaiah felt a tightening urgency, the years of grief now focused into something he could act on. Then let's start today. Monique's gaze met his. We'll uncover everything, no matter how deeply it's buried. And we'll do it before the museum leaves the state. Time is the enemy. Outside, the streets of Los Angeles hummed on. Inside the office, the impossible, the paradox between his brother's disappearance and the exhibit, felt for the first time like something he could confront, measure, and challenge. And somewhere in the redacted records, the truth waited, just beyond reach. Valerie Carter had left California 2 days ago, heading east to be with family in New York. The weight of seeing Elijah's face in that glass display had been too much for her. Every detail, the crescent birthmark, the rigid posture, gnawed at her, and the grief had begun to manifest physically. Isaiah had stayed behind, refusing to let her bear the chaos alone. Her blood pressure had spiked when she called earlier, voice strained, almost panicked. I can't be there, Isaiah. I don't know if I can handle it, she whispered. You don't have to, he said, voice low but firm. I'll take care of it. You need rest, family. Just focus on getting better. But he could hear the fear behind her words. Fear that this wasn't just an exhibit, that what they had both suspected was real. He had promised her and himself that he would shoulder the confrontation, the research, the legal chaos. Her plane ticket lay on the counter, folded neatly. She wouldn't have stayed if she thought she could manage it. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly, thinking of the past 8 years, the absence, the waiting, the unanswered questions. Now the impossible was standing before them, preserved, silent, accusing. And while she flew toward the East Coast trying to escape the pain, he remained in Los Angeles, steeling himself. He would uncover the truth. He had to. Isaiah's mom called many hours after a successful flight, and she was glad his son was okay. Therefore, Isaiah sits alone in the apartment, the city lights of Los Angeles casting long reflections across the coffee table. He spreads out the files again, old police reports, museum acquisition logs, and the photos of Elijah in the display. He notices it first in the margins of the oldest documents, tiny symbols scribbled next to names, dates, and places. A triangle, a crescent, a pattern that repeats. He leans closer, whispers of a network hinted at but never named directly. Groups that seemed to appear wherever bodies vanished, or where preserved specimens were reported. He traces the shapes with his finger, connecting dots across decades, across continents. Valerie watches quietly from the doorway, arms folded. You're seeing connections where maybe none exist, she says softly. Isaiah shakes his head. I thought so too, but look here. He points to the corner of a cold case report from 2006. The same triangle, faintly stamped near the officer's initials. It was on Elijah's file too. I didn't notice it then because I didn't know what it meant. But it's here, and here, in the museum's older logs. Some network keeps showing up. Valerie steps closer. Do you think this could be linked to him? To your brother's disappearance? Isaiah swallows, his jaw tight. It has to be. There's no other explanation. The exhibit, the vanished records, the missing donor info, they all tie back to the same pattern. The triangle, the crescent. It's subtle but deliberate. He flips through the acquisition logs of the Pacific Antiquities exhibit again. Names redacted, dates obscured, locations blacked out. But on almost every page, there's a symbol, repeated, almost ritualistic. He compares it to the police reports. Every time Elijah's disappearance intersects with a supposed donation, the symbol appears. A chill moves down his spine. They've been doing this for centuries, he whispers. Or maybe it's a lineage, a tradition passed along. And my brother, he got caught up in it. The last place he was seen before he vanished, he told us he was going to a private collection in San Diego. That's the same network. Valerie takes a deep breath. So this isn't random, not the disappearance, not the exhibit. Isaiah nods slowly, voice low. The symbol, the triangle with the crescent, every vanished person, every body displayed, and Elijah. Everything he left behind, everything I've carried for 8 years. It all connects. He leans back, letting the weight settle. The room is silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, Los Angeles moves on, but inside the pattern is clear. A network, a shadow, an unseen hand stretching across time. And somewhere in that shadow lies the truth about his twin, still missing, still preserved, still waiting to be uncovered. Isaiah's phone rang just as he was leaving the library. The caller ID was unknown, but the voice that answered made him pause. "Mr. Carter, this is Monique Hayes," the attorney said, calm but urgent. "I've reviewed your petition. The judge, Helena Marchwood, has taken a personal interest in your case. We have a court date. DNA testing will be considered, and the motion will not be dismissed outright." Isaiah felt a jolt in his chest. "The judge? Personally?" "Yes," Monique replied. "She wants to see this matter treated seriously. I need you in Los Angeles tomorrow morning to proceed with the hearing." He nodded, though she couldn't see him. "I'll be there, thank you. I won't let this slide." "Good," she said. "Prepare all documentation, medical records, black eye, everything. The court will need them. And Mr. Carter," there was a pause, careful, deliberate. "This could move faster than you expect. Be ready." Isaiah hung up, the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest. The impossible was about to face judgment. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. Isaiah sat in the front row, hands folded tightly, clutching the folders he had carried across states and offices for months. He could feel the hum of anticipation in the air, a quiet vibration that matched the tension coiled in his chest. Judge Helena Marchwood called the session to order. Her gavel tapped once, echoing through the high-ceilinged room. The attorneys representing the Pacific Antiquities exhibit rose first, calm, poised, every movement precise. "Your Honor," their lead counsel began smoothly, "all acquisitions were made with consent. Donor identities remain confidential for ethical reasons. Any alleged resemblance to your petitioner's relative is coincidental. Emotional misidentification does not constitute legal standing." Isaiah's jaw tightened. He could feel the words like a physical weight. "Coincidence," he muttered under his breath. "4 unique markers. Coincidence." He leaned forward when the judge allowed him to speak. "Your Honor," he said, voice low but unflinching. "This is not coincidence. My brother disappeared 8 years ago. We have medical records, dental x-rays, surgery documentation, and this display, the specimen, matches 4 unique identifiers that can be verified scientifically. I am requesting independent DNA testing. Nothing else will prove or disprove this." The courtroom murmured. Some glanced at the photos Isaiah laid on the desk. The left eye, the crescent birthmark, the shoulder scar. And in that instant, the impossible seemed to stare back at everyone present. The museum's attorneys exchanged glances. "DNA testing is unnecessary. The donor's identity is confidential, and the exhibit complies with all ethical protocols. Any request of this nature sets a dangerous precedent. Public display consent cannot be challenged retroactively," one argued. But Isaiah stood firm. He had come too far, carried too much, to let words deflect the truth. "I am not here to challenge legality abstractly," he said, voice rising. "I am asking for verification of identity. My brother vanished. He never came home. This is my evidence, my only chance at clarity." The judge's eyes narrowed, taking in the tense faces of attorneys, spectators, and Isaiah. She tapped her pen against the bench thoughtfully. "DNA testing will be granted," she said finally, the words punctuating the room. "Your petition is not dismissed. The court recognizes the potential validity of your claims and the necessity for scientific verification." A quiet gasp swept through the room. Isaiah sank back into his chair, relief and exhaustion colliding in equal measure. Outside the courtroom, whispers had already begun. Phones were raised, reporters scribbled furiously. The public interest that had been simmering quietly was now stirring. Authorities hesitated, unsure how far to pursue the testing. Museum officials muttered about procedural confidentiality, about ethical standards, about coincidental resemblance. Scientists argued over feasibility, methodology, contamination risk. But none could ignore the facts laid bare in the courtroom, and none could ignore the swelling curiosity outside the courthouse doors. Isaiah stood afterward, walking out to the sidewalk, the sunlight warm against his face. Strangers nodded at him, some silently expressing sympathy, others awe. He felt the weight of years lift fractionally. He had resisted the dismissal of truth, the erasure of his questions, and he had prevailed enough to force verification. But the fight was only beginning. DNA testing would not answer immediately. Museum staff could delay. Evidence could be mishandled. The impossible, the paradox of Elijah's disappearance against the exhibit's claims, still loomed. Yet now the momentum had shifted. The public was watching, pressure was mounting. Authorities in the museum could no longer ignore the scrutiny, and Isaiah felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. The truth, once exposed, would not be hidden again. He held his folders tighter, each paper a fragment of proof, a token of memory, a demand for justice. And in the quiet moments as the crowd thinned and cameras clicked in the distance, he whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "DNA will tell us. It has to." The city continued on around him. The streets were busy, indifferent. But inside, in the minds of those who had watched the hearing, the story had shifted. The impossible was now a question, a challenge, a demand for resolution. And Isaiah would not rest until he had answers. The morning news hit Isaiah's phone like a wave. Headlines scrolled rapidly. Mummy in traveling exhibit may be human relative of missing man. Exhibit faces public scrutiny. Family demands DNA testing. He scrolled, eyes wide, stomach tight. Social media erupted. Theories collided, some rational, some conspiratorial. Was it coincidence, ancient ritual, or something darker, something deliberately hidden? Hashtags multiplied. Hash Elijah's, face hash. Pacific Antiquities hash DNA challenge. Protesters gathered outside the museum in Los Angeles. Signs shook in the wind. Truth for the missing, respect the dead, no secrets behind glass. Their chants echoed off the nearby buildings. A mix of outrage and demand. Cameras captured it all, live. But the crowd didn't know yet that Isaiah had already filed the motion, that the legal wheels were turning faster than anyone could see. Museum officials hurried through statements. The exhibit spokesperson stressed ethics, donor consent, and confidentiality. The press challenged them at every turn. Questions about provenance, chain of custody, and missing paperwork cut through the official lines. And then came the pushback, the removal of certain pieces, the restriction of public access, the careful closing of doors for some visitors while others were allowed in under supervision. Isaiah watched it unfold from the sidewalk, the phone pressed to his ear. Monique Hayes' voice was steady, deliberate. The judge granted the preliminary motion. The exhibit is under review. DNA testing will proceed, but quietly. They don't want a spectacle. That final test, it's the only thing that will confirm everything or prove coincidence. He nodded, heart hammering. So, it actually happens. Yes, she said, but you have to let the process run. The public doesn't control this part. Evidence comes first, proof first, and then the consequences will follow. But Isaiah could feel it already, the anticipation tightening around his chest. The city was alive with speculation. Every news story, every camera angle, every tweet felt like a drumbeat counting down to revelation. People were watching, waiting, demanding answers that had been buried for years. He looked back at the Pacific Antiquities exhibit through the glass walls. The mummy, motionless, silent, enigmatic, remained inside, protected and scrutinized, a paradox frozen in time. The final test would either shatter the illusion or confirm it. But until that moment, the tension hung thick in the air, unresolved, palpable, like a shadow stretching over everything. And somewhere beneath the headlines, beneath the chants and the posts, the truth waited, waiting for a small vial, a swab, a single proof. And Isaiah, standing there amidst the chaos, could only breathe, silently willing the outcome, but knowing that the world would not have to wait much longer. Everything hinged on that one test, and soon the answer would come. Isaiah had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Days blurred into one another, each morning dragging the weight of anticipation, each night filled with restless thoughts of Elijah. Today he was in the lab with Monique Hayes. The sterile light glinted off the counters, harsh and relentless. But he hardly noticed. His hands were clenched into fists, shaking slightly. The technician entered, holding a single printout. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice careful, almost gentle, "we have the results." Isaiah's heart slammed. He took the paper with trembling hands. Numbers, sequences, percentages. They swam before his eyes. He didn't need to understand the science to feel it in his bones. This proves it," he whispered, voice breaking. "The DNA, it matches. 4 unique markers. My brother. There's no mistake." Monique placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "It's undeniable," she said softly. "Legally, scientifically. Your brother and the specimen in the exhibit share the same genetic profile at every verified point." Tears pricked at Isaiah's eyes. Relief, disbelief, and grief collided violently. 8 years of absence. 8 years of unanswered questions. All condensed into a single moment, and he felt the impossible, proof, settle on him like both a blessing and a weight. But then his eyes flicked down. One line, one marker, remained inconclusive. Something in the Y chromosome analysis didn't fully align, statistically minor, but enough to leave a shadow. He looked up at Monique. What does this mean?" She pursed her lips. "It doesn't change the match. It's confirmed. But this one detail, we don't understand it yet. Further testing may be required. Something unusual is showing." Isaiah's chest tightened. He had imagined closure. He had imagined answers. But even now, a fragment of mystery remained, stubborn and unresolved. He wiped at his eyes, finally lifting the phone from his pocket. His mother's number. He dialed, trembling. "Mom!" His voice cracked before the first word even formed. "Isaiah?" Her voice was fragile, quivering. Is it him?" He nodded, tears spilling freely. Yes, Mom. It's him. The DNA. It's Elijah. They've confirmed it. He's my brother." A choked sob came through the line. Isaiah's mother wept openly, the years of fear and worry finally crashing into reality. "Oh God," she whispered. I can't believe it." Outside the lab, somewhere unseen, the world shifted. News would spread, headlines would scream, but inside that room there was only the raw collision of grief and relief, of absence and confirmation. Isaiah folded the report carefully, pressing it to his chest. The left eye, the crescent birthmark, the memories of laughter, of childhood, of everything he had carried silently for years. And yet the inconclusive marker lingered like a question in the air, proof undeniable, but one secret still untouched, still waiting. He exhaled slowly, the tears streaming freely. The DNA had spoken. His brother had been found. But the full truth, the impossible details, the mystery of how it had come to this, remained just out of reach. For the first time in 8 years, Isaiah felt both relief and heartbreak, entwined so tightly they could not be separated. Isaiah's phone rang just after sunrise, cutting through the quiet of his small apartment. He answered on instinct, tension coiling tight in his chest. "Mr. Carter," said Detective Luis Moreno. "Los Angeles PD, we've reopened Elijah's disappearance case." Isaiah froze. "Reopened?" "Yes," Moreno said carefully, his voice steady but subdued. "After your petition, the DNA results, and public pressure, the department reviewed the files. There are new details you need to hear." Isaiah gripped the phone tighter, nails digging into his palm. "Go on." "We located hospital records from St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Los Angeles," Moreno continued. "The patient was admitted under a false name, John Carver. Entry at 10:15 a.m., last recorded vitals at 3:42 p.m., the same day Elijah disappeared." Isaiah's pulse quickened. "Time of death?" Detective Moreno exhaled slowly. "Within hours of admission, the official cause is listed as traumatic injury. There are signs of struggle, lacerations consistent with a knife wound. The attending physician noted bruising, defensive wounds on the arms. The report mentions the possibility of robbery or assault. They couldn't identify him, and the body was processed as unclaimed." Isaiah's throat went dry. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. "Someone stabbed him?" "Possibly," Moreno said. "The evidence suggests an altercation. The details are sparse, but it wasn't an accident. The sequence implies a confrontation. He resisted. The nature of the injuries indicates he fought back. And then, there was a pause. Months later, through what the hospital considered legal channels, the body was sold to the traveling museum you saw, the Pacific Antiquities exhibit. Isaiah's mind reeled. The glass display, the rigid figure, the crescent birthmark, the DNA confirmation. All the years of waiting and wondering, every tear and sleepless night, collided into a single, unbearable truth. How could they let this happen? Isaiah whispered, voice breaking. How could anyone think this is acceptable? Moreno's voice was low, careful. Procedures fail, paperwork fails, and bodies sometimes vanish into systems no one questions. But now we're tracing the path, hospital to intermediary to museum. Every transfer, every signature, every document. We intend to hold accountable whoever allowed this to happen. Isaiah could barely breathe. The betrayal, the loss, the silence of the system, everything he and his mother had endured, pressed down like a physical weight. Yet amidst the grief, clarity began to emerge. He had proof. The impossible was now undeniable. Moreno continued. We're compiling evidence. Your documentation, the DNA results, and the hospital files. It's enough to establish a proper investigation. The case is no longer cold. We're moving fast, but carefully. The circumstances around Elijah's death and the handling of his remains are now official priorities. Isaiah pressed his hand to his forehead, images flashing. Elijah laughing in their childhood photos, the left eye, the crescent birthmark, and then the display. Motionless, preserved, silent. But now, Moreno added, the system is watching. The museum cannot move the exhibit. Records cannot be destroyed. The chain of custody is being scrutinized. Isaiah exhaled slowly, letting the news settle. The grief remained, sharp and jagged. But finally, there was acknowledgement. Finally, the truth, messy, cruel, and undeniable, was being confronted. And yet one question lingered. Who had attacked him? Who allowed his body to vanish into a system meant to protect, not erase? Isaiah knew he wouldn't stop until every piece of the puzzle, every hidden detail had been brought into the light. 8 years of silence, 8 years of absence. And now, justice, or at least the first steps toward it, was moving forward. Isaiah's phone rang just after sunrise, cutting through the quiet of his small apartment. He answered on instinct, tension coiling tight in his chest. Mr. Carter, said Detective Luis Moreno, Los Angeles PD, we've reopened Elijah's disappearance case. Isaiah froze. Reopened? Yes, Moreno said carefully, his voice steady but subdued. After your petition, the DNA results and public pressure, the department reviewed the files. There are new details you need to hear. Isaiah gripped the phone tighter, nails digging into his palm. Go on. We located hospital records from St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Los Angeles, Moreno continued. The patient was admitted under a false name, John Carver. Entry at 10:15 a.m. Last recorded vitals at 3:42 p.m. The same day Elijah disappeared. Isaiah's pulse quickened. Time of death? Detective Moreno exhaled slowly. Within hours of admission, the official cause is listed as traumatic injury. There are signs of struggle, lacerations consistent with a knife wound. The attending physician noted bruising, defensive wounds on the arms. The report mentions the possibility of robbery or assault. They couldn't identify him, and the body was processed as unclaimed. Isaiah's throat went dry. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. Someone stabbed him? Possibly, Moreno said. The evidence suggests an altercation. The details are sparse, but it wasn't an accident. The sequence implies a confrontation. He resisted. The nature of the injuries indicates he fought back. And then there was a pause. Months later, through what the hospital considered legal channels, the body was sold to the traveling museum you saw, the Pacific Antiquities exhibit. Isaiah's mind reeled. The glass display, the rigid figure, the crescent birthmark, the DNA confirmation. All the years of waiting and wondering, every tear and sleepless night, collided into a single, unbearable truth. How could they let this happen? Isaiah whispered, voice breaking. How could anyone think this is acceptable? Moreno's voice was low, careful. Procedures fail, paperwork fails, and bodies sometimes vanish into systems no one questions. But now we're tracing the path, hospital to intermediary to museum. Every transfer, every signature, every document. We intend to hold accountable whoever allowed this to happen. Isaiah could barely breathe. The betrayal, the loss, the silence of the system, everything he and his mother had endured, pressed down like a physical weight. Yet amidst the grief, clarity began to emerge. He had proof. The impossible was now undeniable. Moreno continued, we're compiling evidence. Your documentation, the DNA results, and the hospital files. It's enough to establish a proper investigation. The case is no longer cold. We're moving fast, but carefully. The circumstances around Elijah's death and the handling of his remains are now official priorities. Isaiah pressed his hand to his forehead, images flashing. Elijah laughing in their childhood photos, the left eye, the crescent birthmark, and then the display. Motionless, preserved, silent. But now, Moreno added, the system is watching. The museum cannot move the exhibit. Records cannot be destroyed. The chain of custody is being scrutinized. Isaiah exhaled slowly, letting the news settle. The grief remained, sharp and jagged. But finally, there was acknowledgement. Finally, the truth, messy, cruel, and undeniable, was being confronted. And yet one question lingered. Who had attacked him? Who allowed his body to vanish into a system meant to protect, not erase? Isaiah knew he wouldn't stop until every piece of the puzzle, every hidden detail had been brought into the light. 8 years of silence, 8 years of absence, and now, justice, or at least the first steps toward it, was moving forward. Isaiah's phone rang just after sunrise, cutting through the quiet of his small apartment. He answered on instinct, tension coiling tight in his chest. Mr. Carter, said Detective Luis Moreno. Los Angeles PD. We've reopened Elijah's disappearance case. Isaiah froze. Reopened? Yes, Moreno said carefully, his voice steady but subdued. After your petition, the DNA results, and public pressure, the department reviewed the files. There are new details you need to hear. Isaiah gripped the phone tighter, nails digging into his palm. Go on. We located hospital records from St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Los Angeles, Moreno continued. The patient was admitted under a false name, John Carver. Entry at 10:15 a.m., last recorded vitals at 3:42 p.m., the same day Elijah disappeared. Isaiah's pulse quickened. Time of death? Detective Moreno exhaled slowly. Within hours of admission, the official cause is listed as traumatic injury. There are signs of struggle, lacerations consistent with a knife wound. The attending physician noted bruising, defensive wounds on the arms. The report mentions the possibility of robbery or assault. They couldn't identify him, and the body was processed as unclaimed. Isaiah's throat went dry. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. Someone stabbed him? Possibly, Moreno said. The evidence suggests an altercation. The details are sparse, but it wasn't an accident. The sequence implies a confrontation. He resisted. The nature of the injuries indicates he fought back. And then there was a pause. Months later, through what the hospital considered legal channels, the body was sold to the traveling museum you saw, the Pacific Antiquities exhibit. Isaiah's mind reeled. The glass display, the rigid figure, the crescent birthmark, the DNA confirmation, all the years of waiting and wondering, every tear and sleepless night, collided into a single, unbearable truth. How could they let this happen? Isaiah whispered, voice breaking. How could anyone think this is acceptable? Moreno's voice was low, careful. Procedures fail, paperwork fails, and bodies sometimes vanish into systems no one questions. But now we're tracing the path, hospital to intermediary to museum. Every transfer, every signature, every document, we intend to hold accountable whoever allowed this to happen. Isaiah could barely breathe. The betrayal, the loss, the silence of the system, everything he and his mother had endured, pressed down like a physical weight. Yet amidst the grief, clarity began to emerge. He had proof. The impossible was now undeniable. Moreno continued, "We're compiling evidence. Your documentation, the DNA results, and the hospital files. It's enough to establish a proper investigation. The case is no longer cold. We're moving fast, but carefully. The circumstances around Elijah's death and the handling of his remains are now official priorities." Isaiah pressed his hand to his forehead, images flashing. Elijah laughing in their childhood photos, the left eye, the crescent birthmark, and then the display, motionless, preserved, silent. "But now," Moreno added, "the system is watching. The museum cannot move the exhibit. Records cannot be destroyed. The chain of custody is being scrutinized." Isaiah exhaled slowly, letting the news settle. The grief remained sharp and jagged, but finally there was acknowledgement. Finally the truth, messy, cruel, and undeniable, was being confronted. And yet one question lingered. Who had attacked him? Who allowed his body to vanish into a system meant to protect, not erase? Isaiah knew he wouldn't stop until every piece of the puzzle, every hidden detail had been brought into the light. 8 years of silence, 8 years of absence, and now justice, or at least the first steps toward it, was moving forward. Isaiah sat in the waiting room, hands wrapped tightly around the folder that had become his constant companion for months. Monique Hayes sat beside him, calm, precise, her eyes scanning the documents one last time before they filed the papers. The air smelled faintly of printer ink and coffee, sterile yet alive with anticipation. "Are you ready?" Monique asked softly. Isaiah exhaled, a mix of fear and determination. "I have to be. I can't let this slide. Not after everything." They walked together into the law office of the clerk, the polished floors echoing each step. Isaiah's stomach twisted, memories of Elijah flooding through him, the laughter, the birthday candles, the quiet moments before the disappearance, and now the face he had seen behind glass in the museum. It was all connected, all undeniable. Monique laid the folder on the counter. "We're filing against the Pacific Antiquities exhibit operators, Anatomical Solutions, and the hospital that released the body without proper identification." Her voice was steady, deliberate. "The claims, negligence, fraud, and human trafficking violations. Millions in damages are sought. We're seeking accountability for every failure, every ignored protocol, every person who thought this was acceptable." The clerk nodded, reviewing the papers. Isaiah's hand hovered over the table, tense. He wanted to touch the documents, to feel the weight of the justice they represented. The clerk stamped the papers, the sound sharp and final, reverberating in the quiet office. Monique glanced at Isaiah. "It's filed, officially. The lawsuit exists now in the eyes of the court. They can no longer hide. They cannot claim ignorance. Every document, every transaction, every transfer, from hospital to auction to exhibit, will be scrutinized." Isaiah nodded slowly, a lump forming in his throat. Relief and dread collided. Relief because the first step had been taken. Dread because the battle was just beginning. "They'll respond," Monique said. "Expect denials, expect deflection. But the evidence you provided, DNA, hospital records, acquisition logs, it's strong. Legally, emotionally, it's compelling." He ran a hand through his hair, staring out the window at Los Angeles beyond the office. The city moved on. People walked past, oblivious. But inside the courts, inside the system, the truth was now being forced into view. His brother's absence, the years of unanswered questions, the stolen identity. It all mattered, and now someone had to pay attention. "But this won't be easy," Monique continued. "The defendants will fight. They'll claim consent. They'll claim anonymity. They'll argue coincidence. But the DNA, the markers, the chain of custody gaps, that's where the case will stand. That's where they can't deflect." Isaiah exhaled slowly, letting the weight settle. His hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the culmination of years of tension, grief, and hope. The lawsuit was more than legal action. It was a declaration. His brother existed, he was taken, and the world would not ignore it any longer. He thought of his mother, her frailty, the blood pressure spiked the day she learned the truth. She had trusted him to handle it. He would. And now he would handle it legally, publicly, and uncompromisingly. The folder felt heavy in his hands as he left the office. Outside, the sun reflected off the buildings, bright and indifferent. But Isaiah felt something shift inside. The system, the bureaucracy, the greed and negligence that had allowed his brother's life to be erased, it would be confronted. Millions in damages. Accountability demanded. A civil record that could not be ignored. And through it all, Elijah's face stayed in his mind, silent yet undeniable. The day was gray, Los Angeles clouds hanging low, heavy with the weight of what had been lost. Isaiah stood near the edge of the small cemetery plot, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. Monique Hayes lingered a few feet behind, discreet, professional, but even she could not hide the quiet solemnity of the moment. The casket had been closed. Years of waiting, of searching, of disbelief and hope, now condensed into polished wood, carried by the cemetery staff to its final resting place. Elijah's body had been released from the museum, finally returned to what should have been his own. Isaiah's mother stood nearby, pale and fragile, the years of worry etched into her face. She reached for his hand and he squeezed it, feeling the tremor in her grip. For once, words were unnecessary. The grief was shared, immediate and crushing. The minister's voice was low, steady. He spoke of memory, of family, of absence and presence. But Isaiah barely heard it. His mind drifted to every moment of Elijah's life he could recall. The laughter, the childhood pranks, the quiet moments in their shared bedroom, the birthdays celebrated too quickly, too briefly. Tears welled and Isaiah brushed them away. He had waited so long for this. The funeral was not just a goodbye, it was a reckoning. Finally, the impossible truth, the DNA confirmation, the long police investigation, the legal battle had allowed them to reclaim what was theirs. And yet the finality, the cold stillness of the grave, cut deeper than any courtroom victory ever could. He stepped closer as the casket was lowered. The wind picked up slightly, cold against his cheek. He felt the weight of 8 years, every unanswered question, every night of worry, every lost holiday, every imagined scenario, released with Elijah's return. He knelt, brushing his hand over the polished wood. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he whispered. I tried to find you. I love you." The minister's words faded into the distance. The sound of dirt hitting wood, the quiet weeping of the few who had come to honor him, everything became a blur. Isaiah's mother rested her head against his shoulder. "He's home," she said softly. "Finally, he's home." Isaiah swallowed, nodding. A single shuddering breath. He looked up at the sky, gray and unyielding, as if the city itself were holding its breath. And in that moment, he let himself grieve, fully, without restraint, without fear. The ceremony ended, the mourners slowly leaving, the casket secured in the ground. Isaiah stayed a moment longer, tracing the crescent birthmark in his memory, the face frozen in photos, the laughter that would now live only in him. Finally, he whispered one last goodbye. The years of waiting, the frustration, the grief, they were all folded into that farewell. And though Elijah was gone from the living world, Isaiah felt a measure of peace. He had reclaimed his brother's dignity. He had said the words, held the grief, and now he could begin to move forward. The dirt settled. The sky remained gray. But for Isaiah, a chapter of unimaginable loss had, at last, found its close. Isaiah returned to his apartment that evening, the city lights of Los Angeles bleeding through the blinds. Everything felt quieter than it had in months. The funeral was over, the lawsuit filed, the DNA confirmed, and yet, nothing felt resolved. He sank into the chair by the window, hands trembling slightly, the folder of documents resting on the coffee table untouched. He had expected relief, closure, maybe even a sense of finality. But instead, a cold weight settled over him. Elijah wasn't just gone. He was gone in a way that no one, not family, not the law, not science, could fully account for. His brother's disappearance had ended, yes, but what the exhibit, the hospital, the transfer, and the body had revealed hinted at something larger, something darker. Isaiah's mind drifted. The museum had been moving from state to state, each stop shrouded in secrecy. How many other specimens had vanished into its network without anyone knowing? How many families had grieved without ever finding proof, without ever getting a name, a body, or a trace? And what are the strange coincidences? The repeating marks, the missing paperwork, the whispered networks that had appeared in Elijah's case? They weren't isolated. They couldn't be. He rubbed his face, exhausted and haunted. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. But in his mind, he could still hear the soft clinking of glass, the preserved laughter of his brother frozen in a display case, the cold stare of the eye that had stared back at him through decades of absence. And then the thought came, sharp and unsettling. What if Elijah hadn't been the only one? What if there were others, children, young adults, taken, preserved, cataloged, passed from one place to another? How many families had been told their loved ones probably ran away or disappeared under unknown circumstances? How many parents had trusted systems that could fail so catastrophically? Isaiah's chest tightened. He reached for his phone, calling his mother instinctively. "Mom, you need to be careful," he said, voice trembling. "Talk to your friends. Warn anyone who listens. Pay attention to where your children go. The world isn't always what it seems. People, places, you think you trust?" His voice cracked. "You can't always trust them." He hung up, staring out at the city lights again. The shadows of the streets seemed different now, heavier, somehow more ominous. The exhibit's glass, the preserved body, the missing documents, the redacted notes, they weren't just artifacts of one tragedy. They were evidence of an ongoing pattern, a system that could swallow lives quietly, invisibly, and leave families in limbo. Isaiah felt the weight of responsibility press down. He couldn't stop thinking, couldn't stop imagining, couldn't stop warning. Every parent, every sibling, every person who had ever lost someone suddenly felt like a potential victim of something far bigger, far more sinister than mere accident or neglect. And in that quiet apartment, with the city buzzing obliviously outside, a realization struck him cold. Elijah's story didn't end with the funeral. It had only begun to expose what might still be happening. And no one, not the authorities, not the courts, not the public, was fully aware. Isaiah closed his eyes, whispering the words he hadn't dared to say aloud before. Be careful, watch, protect. Don't let anyone assume it can't happen to you. The night stretched long, shadows lengthening across the walls, and somewhere across the country, another family might be grieving. Another child might be missing. Another secret preserved behind glass. The story wasn't over, and the warning was his burden now. If you're a parent or anyone watching, don't wait. Pay attention to where your loved ones go. Question the systems. Protect them while you can. The world can be silent, indifferent, but it's watching too. Don't let your family be the next story, because someone has already paid the price, and it could be anyone's.